So thank you so much for joining today. This is our seventh week of the webinar series, so it's really going great so far, I think. We're so lucky to have Ira and Sierra today talking to us about youth in climate change activism. I'm personally funded through the Clean Foundation. The seminars are made possible through the region of Queens. So thank you to our funders. And we would just like to acknowledge, as in every week, that we are meeting virtually, always meeting, here in Guestwick, one of the 7 districts of Mi'kmaq, homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. With that being started, so Ira and Sierra are 2 youth. One of their projects has been a lawsuit against Her Majesty the Queen herself, and we'll let them take it away from there. They'll introduce themselves. So we'll do, the way that we'll moderate it is they'll do their talk, they will go back and forth doing some discussion of things. If you have questions, we would ask that you put them in the chat, and we'll do a bit of a moderated discussion at the end. So okay, take it away, Ira.
Great. Okay, people can hear me? Okay, so you just did one, but I would also just like to acknowledge that we're currently gathered here virtually on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And it's important to recognize it, that we're here today, and it's important to acknowledge that this was their land first, and we have not treated them with respect and compassion ever since we got here. So it's always important to recognize that we need to do better and move forward in a way that is less harming, because with missing and murdered Indigenous women, the pipelines, everything, it's a constant cycle that we need to be aware of, so we can try to stop making things worse. But to start out, yeah, my name's Ira. I live here in Caledonia. I use he/him pronouns. And I've done quite a bit of climate change work over the last few years, but I'm mostly involved with Fridays for Future, like you mentioned, the lawsuit, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and just different groups, different local groups that we've started up to try to kind of conserve the ecosystem around here. I would really like to thank Sierra. This was kind of a last minute thing for her, and she can introduce herself, but yeah, thanks for coming, Sierra. This was helpful.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This is like a really fun way to start the morning for me. Cause yeah, I'm ahead here. Well, I guess it's just turning to the afternoon now, but yeah, I'm Sierra Robinson. I'm 18 years old. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm on the land of the Cowichan, Coast Salish, and Malahat peoples. And where that is British Columbia, Canada. So I'm kind of on the other side of the country from you guys. Yeah, I'm a part of the organization Earth Guardians. I've also worked a lot with this organization called Abundant Earth Foundation. And I'm starting my own little project with one of my best friends, Sol Zobrist, called Chasing Change, which is a youth-led media project, uplifting like stories of people on the front lines, and yeah, these activists that really need their voices to be shared, and people that have all of these resources and knowledge to share. And so I'm really excited to be here and to be able to talk today. And yeah, the lawsuit is a pretty big part of my life as well. And that happened about almost a year ago is when I joined that. And yeah, so I'm happy to be here today, and I'll pass it back to you, Ira.
Thanks. So I think the first thing we're going to talk about for a little bit, because it's the big thing that this is how we met, is the lawsuit. So we're 2 of the plaintiffs, and like you said, technically, I guess we're suing the Queen. That sounds very kind of very important. I don't know if we're going against the Queen herself, but it's against the Canadian federal government, and so we're doing it with the help of an organization known as Our Children's Trust. They're mostly based out of the US, but they're this really great organization, great people, and they helped start the one in the US, Juliana. And then so David Suzuki Foundation, that is based in Canada, is also helping out a lot. And Arve Finley, they're the law company that is helping us file the lawsuit. So I guess we can talk kind of a little bit about the lawsuit in general. So people have probably heard about it, but if you haven't, so it's a lawsuit against the Canadian federal government, filed by 15 youth plaintiffs, and we're suing because we are individually being harmed by climate change. And so we feel that the government is not taking our rights into account when thinking about the future of our country, and they're just not doing enough. So we're going against the government because we feel our rights aren't. Yeah.
They're not doing enough, but they're actively contributing to it as well. So we're saying that Canada, when they're going out and they are continuing to promote fossil fuel projects and subsidize these projects that are directly linked by scientists to making the impacts of climate change worse, to contributing to these big issues. We're saying that the government is knowingly contributing to climate change because there's the science there, and there's so many links there. And so when our government is knowingly contributing to something, and they also know the effects of how dangerous and how like Justin Trudeau himself will talk about how big of an issue climate change is, and yet he's continuing to put continuing to promote projects and stuff at the same time. And so we're just saying, the plaintiffs are saying that our rights are being violated. Our charter rights to life, liberty, security of person, equality, and our public trust rights by continuing to contribute to climate change. And so there's something called the Public Trust Doctrine. It says Canada has the legal responsibility to protect vital, commonly held natural resources. So that would be our atmosphere, our oceans, permafrost in the north of Canada, and other resources as well, like our trees and waterways and rivers. And when all of these things are at stake, it hurts us. Each plaintiff has their own harms, and why we're talking about how it's hurt us individually, but also collectively as a country, and as young people especially, our rights are being violated disproportionately because we don't quite have a right to vote yet, and we our voices aren't really being heard in that way by people. And so we're bringing this lawsuit forward, and we're really I'll pass it back to you, actually.
But yeah, no, just what you said, our rights are being violated disproportionately and we can't vote, which for one says we can't choose who's representing us for our future, because what the government is doing right now is affecting our future. If the government's deciding to invest more in fossil fuels, in non-renewable energy sources, that's hurting us, and we can't even say, no, we don't want you to do that, because we can't vote. We can't choose who we want to be representing us. So since we're being affected disproportionately, I know personally, I've talked to politicians, and I've done different things like that, but there's kind of a limit to how much effect it can have. And I'm sure Sierra's done similar things. So what we feel is right now, the lawsuit, it's kind of a last ditch attempt. We've tried the ways everyone else has told us to get our politicians to listen, but nothing ever works. So I think this lawsuit right now is the best way for us to continue this, because it's just not fair what we're doing. We've tried all the other routes, and it doesn't work. So yeah, maybe do you want to talk about kind of what your harms are, Sierra, and I can kind of compare it to ours, because I think it's kind of important for people to know climate change is hurting all of us specifically.
Yeah, for sure. So exactly what Ira was just saying is we're being hurt in so many ways, but we're already doing so much in our lives. And even before this lawsuit came around, I've been doing work for 10 years around regenerative agriculture, permaculture work in my community, and really educating myself on issues, as well as how I can help start to make them better, or start to create the future that I really want to see. And so I was doing individual work, community work, and then it comes to the point where if our governments aren't doing work, it's actively working against everything else that I'm trying to do at the same time. And so that's one of the reasons I was really, really excited to be engaged in this project. Yeah, so my harms, like I said, I live on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and it's a really beautiful place. And a lot of times when people are talking about Canada, we're known as this really green country. We're known as this place that, oh, we're super good with renewable energies. We're all about equality and kindness for other people. And we're constantly compared to against other countries for being kind of like this leader of greenness. And it kind of drives me crazy because no, we're really not all that great. We just have really good liars that are representing us. And also, we live in a really beautiful place, but a lot of those things are being destroyed like by people for greed, for money. But more specifically, like climate change is a really, really big thing. It's a huge thing. It's affecting people across the world. And when I was really little and I learned about climate change, I heard about the polar bears first. That was the stories that I heard. I was like, oh, ice caps are melting, polar bears are dying. I saw all these devastating pictures. And I was like heartbroken. But I realized like a couple years later, over the past couple of years, I've been learning that it's really not, it's not just about the polar bears. That's not the only way we're being affected. It's happening like across the board, affecting our mental health, our physical health, our ability to grow food in our community. So me specifically, I have Lyme disease, which is a tick-borne illness. And ticks across Canada are rising in numbers and are starting to migrate to places they normally wouldn't be because of the climate's warming and winters not being cold enough to kill them off. And we've lost like the moose population, which is funny. Another thing Canada is known for is also really being impacted and dying off because of these ticks and how sick it's making these big creatures, these big animals. And so when people are getting bitten by these ticks, the diseases and stuff that they can get from them as well can be life-threatening, can be extremely painful to live with, and really when we're talking about well-being, it impacts that a lot. And so my physical health has been impacted by that. And my mental health, when I think about my future, I think about the world I want to live in, it's really difficult not to look at reality and look at these statistics we're hearing and look at the unprecedented number of droughts and wildfires. My community, I know so many people that have had to, like last summer, we almost had to evacuate our house because there's been fires like all around us the past couple of years. And I had friends in interior BC that like lost their homes, and I had friends in California that were losing their homes to fires as well. But the point is that our ecosystems are quickly becoming really unstable. And also in the summertime, I'm a farmer, and when I try to grow my food and I don't have water, that's a bit of a difficult thing to do. You need water to grow crops. You need water to feed your livestock. And I have like young kids making jokes being like, but you live on an island. And I'm like, okay, but our fresh water that we have in our rivers and in our lakes and in our aquifers are really drying up. And my neighbor's well ran completely dry a couple of years ago. And that summer was the same summer we had to decide whether we wanted to give water to our plants that we were growing or to our cows. So obviously we chose the cows, but it was really upsetting to lose like so many crops. And I think this is a reality for a lot of farmers that people don't talk about a ton in like mainstream culture and stuff, is we don't talk about our agriculture systems and how that's also being impacted by climate change and by all of these storms and hurricanes. And so one summer it was like all the fires and the floods. And then earlier this year when I was on a call, I was like talking to this group in Victoria, I couldn't get there to go and talk at the conference. So I ended up calling in on the phone because I couldn't leave my driveway. And I would have had to like wear a bathing suit or take a little boat because everything around the valley here was so flooded. And I have pictures and stuff of it, but it was crazy. Like there was no way to get like an hour away from my house, because all of the roads were shut down and everything was flooding. The little farm store, like the stores around the area that I've been walking to ever since I was like 9 years old, they're just opening up now. That's how damaged they got over the summer, over through February and stuff. And yeah, and also like our wildlife populations here, it's all really connected. When water levels go down so much, the salmon can't swim up the creeks here. It impacts the health of the forests. But when salmon are and those fish are the main food source for our resident orca whales, we only have, I think it's don't quote me directly on this, but the numbers are somewhere around 70, 72, I think. And that's pretty scary to hear in my lifetime, that there's only that many of this species that BC is really known for. Yeah, so those are just some of my harms. I could talk about it for a long time, but not to depress anybody, but that's just the reality for me. And I'm just one young person in British Columbia, Canada. What about all of these other people, young people my age also here, my friends and family members that are also feeling these impacts in so many different ways than me as well. And so that's why representing these 15 youth plaintiffs are really we're representing ourselves. We're not making up any of our stories. These are our realities, but also we're not the only ones experiencing these things. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's really what it's about, because we're suing on behalf of all Canadian youth, which is kind of a lot of pressure, but it's so true, because we're from all over Canada, which is good. We have more than half of the plaintiffs are Indigenous, which I think is really important because they have such a big connection to the land. But so if I'm going to talk for harms for a minute, really for where we are, our harms are quite similar to Sierra's, because West Coast, East Coast, there's definitely differences, but we're still quite similar. Until I started working with the people on the lawsuit, I didn't realize how much of my life was affected by climate change. And sure, I could think about it, but I didn't realize how connected it all was. Because if we look at the isthmus, because I always have trouble saying that word, excuse me, but the little piece of land that's connecting New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, that's a very small piece of land. And people that live there, they say a few more hurricanes, one more big hurricane could wipe that out. And that's our one connection to the mainland. And so if you think about that, with the rising sea levels and the increased powerful storms, that's everyone was here during Hurricane Dorian. That was scary. I had trees nearly fall down on my house, and I have friends who lost power for weeks. These things, we don't immediately associate them to climate change, but they are. They're direct things that are happening from failures from governments all over the world. And so we need to focus on that, because we're as much as countries that are living more in the global south are more affected, which is definitely something we need to continue to talk about, we are too. It's not something that we're immune from. But I'm not going to go on a huge list of the harms, because like Sierra said, she went through a lot, and we're facing a lot of the same ones. But so what we're doing, what we're suing for, we don't want money. Well, I do want money, but I don't want money from the government for this. We're suing for, if we win this case, which I believe we will, because what we're doing is right and it needs to win, but what we want is the government to make a science-based climate recovery plan. So that what technically means is that the government, the courts are going to enforce that the government needs to make a plan quickly, because they've wasted so much time already. They need to make a quick plan based on the most current science, because the science is changing all the time. The science that we have today, in half a year, that it's going to be different, because everything is changing so quickly, because we're getting so fast down to this deadline. But so the government is going to have to make a science-based climate recovery plan, so to do the best we can as a country, and not the best what the government thinks we can, what science says, the actual best we can. So moving towards green technology, moving out of fossil fuels, and getting into greener jobs, greener futures for Canada, because that's what we need. And it's not like this is going to hurt Canada a lot. It's going to be tough. No one said it was going to be easy. If we started making these changes 30 years ago, it would be a lot easier. But what needs to happen is we have to make this shift, and it will make Canada a better place. Like, these changes aren't going to be destroying our economy or everything like everyone, like people saying are. Like, this is for the good of our country and for the world. So it's the government's responsibility to be taking care of this. Everyone knows that. And they just need to take responsibility for their actions. There can't be any more. Climate change isn't political. People have to stop making it political, because it's not. It's going to hurt every single one of us. A quote that I read yesterday that I really liked, that David Suzuki said. He said, we're all in a giant car heading towards a brick wall, and everyone's arguing over where they're going to sit. And it's so true. All the countries, it's like me and my sisters when we were kids, fighting over whose blame it is and who has to do more work, when really it doesn't matter, because it's going to hurt all of us anyway. So I think the government needs to wake up and needs to stop fighting us on it, but we can't wait for them to do that. So that's kind of why we're doing the lawsuit. Yeah, Sierra, do you want to kind of move on to the next point?
For sure, yeah. We have a little Google Doc here with some notes for ourselves. But yeah, we are, as young people, like I already said, we're being disproportionately affected, and but we're not the only ones that are being disproportionately affected. BIPOC and minoritized communities, low-income, queer, or LGBTQ communities, coastal communities, especially around Canada, but also across the globe, and so climate change is an issue that's affecting Canada in a lot of ways, but it's also affecting across the world. And one of the Canada's arguments back to us was, oh, but like we can't, how are you expecting us to fix climate change when it's a global issue? And we're exactly what Ira said before, is we're not expecting them to fix climate change. We're just expecting Canada and our governments to be responsible for their decisions and for what they're doing and how they're contributing to it. And we want our country to start stepping up and being a climate leader that they're saying they are. Because our country is constantly being like, we're doing so good for climate change, as they're continuing to make these deals, and the statistics show that our greenhouse gas emissions keep going up and up and up. And so maybe we're not out of all the countries, maybe we're not the worst, but the point is that we have to take responsibility for what we are doing and do our part before we can expect other countries to do the same. So taking responsibility. But yeah, right now there's so many different movements going on. The climate change movement has been a really big thing, and Greta, she really kicked that off last year with all of the climate strikes and helped get a lot of publicity and words about it. But she wasn't the first person doing that work. There has been Indigenous and queer communities and these BIPOC communities fighting this fight for years and years before. And right now, across the states and across Canada, Black Lives Matter has been a really big movement that's been brought to the surface with all of the police brutality happening. So there's all of these different movements going on, but again, like bringing it back that they're all really interconnected. They're all of these same systems that are creating this white supremacist, capitalized, really, really toxic environment. Is also it's extremely connected to the climate movement and to the work that we're doing as well. And all of these terrible things that are happening are really by a system that's essentially been broken, but it's also a system that was created that way. And so I feel like, Ira, maybe you should help me out here, because I think I'm rambling and going off. But yeah, if the climate movement isn't perfect or anything either, we still have to deal with racism, sexism, ageism, all of these things. But there is a lot of people that are stepping up and trying. And I think that right now it's really, really important to listen to BIPOC voices, and for hundreds of years, there's been so much pain being inflicted upon these people. And there's been so much racism and so much sexism and so many issues. And I think that as a social justice and also environmental justice activist, sometimes I feel overwhelmed at what issue I want to tackle first. And I realize that like working on any of these things, there's going to be a ripple effect if I really make sure that I'm questioning my own ideas and beliefs, where they're coming from, and how I really want to make an impact in the world. And I do think that the lawsuit will be a really big step in creating change. But even though in indigenous communities, they only account for like 5% of the world's population, they protect 80% of global biodiversity. And that was from National Geographic. That was a statistic from there. But that's a lot. And the fact that Canada is really not protecting indigenous communities and is really continuing to oppress them, take advantage of them, the continuation of genocide, honestly, it's heartbreaking to see. And it's heartbreaking because these are people that are being impacted and communities that are being impacted. And also it's directly linking to our environments being impacted. And just in general, that whole system is extremely broken down.
Yeah, and like exactly what you said, like with all of these issues, like the climate movement actually kind of opened my eyes to all of these issues. Like I was working on different things before this, but like about a year ago I went to my first Extinction Rebellion protest, and then from there on, that's I don't need to do my whole life story, but that's how where it expanded. That's where it came from. And so I started doing my own Fridays for Future stuff. Two amazing people in Bridgewater, I did stuff with them for a long time, and that's what opened my eyes. From there, I started realizing like these things that we learned about in school for a very short period of time, the civil rights movement, residential schools, that wasn't a long time ago. That was people changed the photos from the civil rights movement, so they're black and white, but it wasn't that long ago. There's color photographs. And so all of these things, the point I'm trying to make here is that we look at all these different issues and you can get really stressed out. You can see all of these really, really important issues and you feel so overwhelmed because you don't know how to tackle them at all. Because let's face it, climate change, racism, sexism, these things are so huge, so part of a capitalist system. We can't even comprehend them sometimes. Like they're really scary. But I think one of the big things about feeling more grounded, feeling a sense of community, is finding people who realize these things are a threat, but then also working on ways to bring them down, to make ourselves stronger. Because I don't know how well I would be doing mentally if I hadn't met all the people from the lawsuit and other people that like really care about the same things I do. So these things that are all, they seem to be really far apart, they're actually really connected, and they all, if you look for the links, they all work together. And so a system where we're fighting against climate change and sexism and racism, homophobia, everything, it all makes a better system, and it can be done. You don't need to just pick one. Like it's how it works. So to go back to some scientific facts, we are running out of time. Science indicates that we need to reduce the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels from, so this sounds a little bit complicated, but science indicates that we need to reduce the levels from 408 parts per million ppm to below 350 ppm by the year 2100, or sorry, 2100. So that's basically what we're fighting for. That's what we want the courts to get the government to do. It's science says that's what we need. And there's all of these things that are really tough to deal with, but like our oceans, our seas, they need to be protected, because like the coral reefs, algae, like that, those are carbon sinks, just like the forests. And so the forests are burning down and people are destroying the oceans. And so if we start protecting those resources, then that's can help. That will bring things back.
Yeah, apparently,
so,
and like
yeah,
big clear-cut logging of old-growth forests is still a thing in Canada. It shouldn't be, but it is. And we're fracking in communities where there's like BIPOC people, low-income people, children growing up, and we know the effects of this on people's health and on the environment around them, and yet it's still happening. And so it's really heartbreaking to think about, but it's also important to think about and important to start asking, like, our governments and people, everyone, like individuals need to take actions, but also these big systems that say they represent us really need to do so as well. And the switch from there's something called the Green New Deal that was talked about a lot in the States, which I'm a big advocate for and really enjoy. I really just think it's really incredible. And I don't want to take up time talking about that all today or anything, but I think that everyone like should definitely research that if you haven't heard of it, because that is a bit of a plan that goes forward. Oh, also, BIPOC, for anyone who doesn't know, is Black, Indigenous people, or people of color, is what that represents.
Yeah, I realized that when we were saying it, like it's a relatively new term. It's kind of great because it encompasses, yeah, Black, Indigenous, people of color. It's good because it encompasses a lot of people, but it's also a relatively new term. So I realized we probably should have said that in the beginning. But I think it's also important. I'm gonna say, like, I've kind of grown tired of all the people saying, like, we need to talk about hope and everything, which I realize sounds a little bit bad because, like, yeah, sure, humans need hope. It's a thing humans need. And so rather than hope, as we're coming closer to the end of this, rather than hope, I think I'd like to talk about what we can do, because that brings hope. Action brings hope, and all of these other things, and it brings like feeling like that we are actually doing something, because blindly hoping for something, that just makes me feel like we're just in denial. And so I think that, like, these things are really important. So just like different actions you can do is talk to your local government, email your local government, donate to funds that are helping counteract climate change effects, or different groups that are helping Indigenous people that are doing the same work. Like, all of these things, there's lots that we can do. It's just finding the people who can help us do it. So I just saw a question here. I'm just going to read it. How important is it changing consumer habits independent of government from your perspective? How important is it to reduce population levels? How do you see that issue? No, that was big when I was your age, but we hardly ever hear it discussed today. So there's a few different things there.
I can tackle that
consumer first. Yeah, definitely. You go, Sierra.
Okay, cool. So I was actually just talking about this. I did a little rant on my Instagram the other night about our food systems in Canada and the States. But consumer habits, I actually really enjoy talking about this, because as consumers and as individuals, we have a responsibility to make choices that reflect what we want. But it can be really, really difficult to do that when all of the foods that we're eating are not really nourishing our bodies anymore, but kind of causing harm to them. And when the foods that are affordable on those shelves are foods that are mostly chemical filled, like, it's a weird thing to think about. I'm a young 18-year-old trying to like make enough money to buy my own food, like learn how to live in this world. But the stuff that I can start to afford, like, I'm noticing this for myself, and I'm noticing this in a lot of communities. The reality is that we can't afford those like fancy organic sticker foods that would be better for us, and we often can't choose to buy foods that have been grown in a way that aren't negatively impacting the environment, unless we're growing food ourselves, which I 100% recommend. But I do know that our governments need to, like, if, for example, this climate science recovery plan really happened and worked with the scientists, that would mean changing a lot of things about how we're producing foods and products and all different things like that. But it really isn't that complicated. Right now, our agriculture systems are extremely destructive to the environment and to people. It's actually, right now when we're talking about like COVID-19 and stuff, it's farmers aren't considered essential workers, and yet if they stopped working and picking your food, it wouldn't end up on those shelves. And so protecting those essential workers, but also just like, if our government started subsidizing regenerative agriculture practices, or practices that were helping protect people, communities, and the environment, and giving us more nutritious food at the same time, our consumer habits could be a lot better. But I think it goes a bit of both ways. Like, individuals need to take responsibility and do the very best that they can, but also on a bigger level, governments do need to do their part as well in making sure that there is more products available. But I just say, like, buy local, or grow your own, or do your very best for that.
And something to add on to that, like you said, Sierra, like personal like responsibility is important with going and agriculture, but also, like you said, like it's more expensive and it's harder for some people, especially lower income. And so I think it's like important to recognize, like, I don't know if I can count how many times myself and like my other organizers and people like have been asked, like, so do you recycle or do you drive an electric car and all these things? And like, sure, it's important. Yes, I would love to get an electric car, and yes, I do recycle, but it's 2020. We're coming to the very tipping point of all of this. Can we stop talking about recycling? It's important. I'm not saying throw your trash on the side of the road, but we need to be focusing on government accountability. So as a community, maybe do things besides the norm, like maybe try to make a community garden, so that way you're making organic food, like Sierra said, and it's benefiting the community at once. So work together as a community, because we can't really always control the government, sadly. So yeah, work together as a community towards the different things. I'm just going to go on to the next question because I see some more coming here.
There's lots of questions coming.
Somebody was asking about, yeah.
Yara?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got lots of questions coming in here. Thank you so much, everybody. Do we want to do like jumping from one question to another, or we can ask a follow-up if David has a response to that answer to his question, and we can go through and just make sure that we're all tied up, loose ends? How do we feel about that?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know about you, Sierra, but I kind of find it easier to answer questions when they're actually asked through audio. If it's possible, do you think people could ask their questions through audio? But yeah, whoever asked that first question.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, David. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you didn't address population, but that's okay.
I can quickly.
Oh, yeah, Sierra, you go.
I mean, the population, I think it was a little over 2 billion when I was born. Now it's up to 7.
Address that, like, listen. So this is really interesting. This is something really interesting to me, because I'm like a young woman who, in the future, maybe I want to have kids. I don't know. That's something that I've been thinking about, and I know a lot of people my age have been thinking about. And there's almost this weird thing where we're like, if the world is really, if we're seeing so many impacts now, what is it going to be like in the future? And is raising children in this world really going to be safe for them, or is it going to be like, how is that going to be? What kind of resources will they have? And I think that it's less about, like,
Uh-oh.
Sorry, Sierra, your video is kind of frozen. I'll just continue talking. I think she'll probably be back.
Well, that's okay. You can go on to the next question.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thank you.
Okay. Go to some other ones.
There's some more questions on population.
Yeah.
So we'll address it. Yeah. Let's go on to Brian's question there, if you want to address that, Ira. Yeah.
So, are you involved in organizing another climate strike march in the coming months? So, at the moment, everyone's very focused on COVID, and so we are also trying to like keep that in mind. There's no, I have no select plans for that right now, but as much as climate strikes and everything like that are really important, and I think they're really productive, they're not the only thing we can do. I recently just started up a group in my community called Caledonia Earth Guardians. It's part of this international group called Earth Guardians that Sierra is actually a really big part of. And so maybe, check us out. Look us up on, if you have Instagram, we'll be having Facebook soon, just Caledonia Earth Guardians. And so we have and we'll be having Facebook soon, or just try to see what events we're doing. And we're starting out, and we're wanting to do more local community events. So at the moment, no. And also I think another big thing is we don't want to kind of take attention away from the Black Lives Matter stuff that's happening right now. That's really, really important, and we don't want to kind of like, we're all kind of on the same page. We don't want to be having battling protests, and so I think we're waiting a little bit for COVID to die down. But there's other things we can do in our community. And then under there, it's just talking about population. I see Sierra, you're back on here. Can you hear us?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so just finishing
Well then,
the sentence that I was
yeah.
saying super quickly. I was just thinking that I think it's less about the population levels of, less about like how many people there are on the planet, but more about like the amount of people that are on the planet. What are they doing to, like, how are they deciding to live? And a lot of it's not necessarily about choice. It depends on like where you're born, but there's a lot of people with a lot of privilege is what I want to really quickly hit on. And those people with privilege and money and all of these different kind of resources, they need to make a lot of choices about how they want to live and how they want to impact the world, and really like what legacy do they want to leave. And like my generation of young people, we are like the last generation that really gets to decide what kind of world we're going to be living in. There's going to be generations after us continuing to fight for human rights and environmental rights, but our generation has a really unique time right now where we are living at like an extreme tipping point. And that tipping point, we're kind of like, here, I'll see if I can turn my camera back on. We're kind of like on this tipping point, and we're honestly going like down. We're already like, if the tipping point was here, we're like here right now. And so the point is that in order to like actually start making that climb, like we're gonna be feeling impacts. We are feeling impacts. In order to start to really see a better world, we're gonna need really, really big changes, and as soon as possible. But just individuals doing the best that they can. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sierra. Did you want to finish off any of Brian's question, Ira, or are we on to John and asking working with government?
I'm pretty much done with Brian's question unless he has any follow-up.
Absolutely. Brian, any follow-up?
Yeah, I had heard that there was that the students' climate strike movement was organizing something for the end of September, but do you know anything about that?
I don't know. It's possible.
Okay.
Do you know when you heard this?
I heard it through an email thing, and they weren't ready to announce it yet, so I don't feel like it's right for me to start announcing it because they aren't announcing it. But it was going to be towards the end of September, and I've been involved with the Just Recovery movement, and so I heard it because of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Right now, a lot of stuff has been happening offline or online, sorry, and so I don't know the exact thing for that, but the best guess is everyone else will know as soon as we know. As far as local movements, that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now, like small local movements that don't involve huge masses of people gathering.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. So what John Swallow said, so yeah, and I agree with that. Most politicians are good people, and they do want to move in the same direction. I just think the issue with that is that, like, I actually saw that Rowan's on here, and so me, her, and Neil, we were part of the group that was talking to quite a few local politicians. There was no one that was really disrespectful. Everyone was very, very nice. Politicians, in general, are nice people because they're getting elected. We're not going to be electing, well, besides the U.S., we're not going to normally be electing huge, mean people. But the problem is they can't, personally, unless they're willing to be a radical and kind of step outside what their party is wanting them to do, they're not going to. Most people, like, it's sad to say, but they're not going to move in such a crazy direction that we need people to be moving in right now. And so, yeah, no, most of them are very nice people, and they're like, we agree, but then nothing really happens. And personally, I just got pretty tired of that. Yeah, like Rowan said, the politicians were great and we had good conversations, but just not a lot of stuff has come from the conversations. If you have anything you want to add.
Like it's been going round and round. Everyone's been talking about
Yeah.
problems, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do something about them," and then they don't. And I think that in local politicians, there's some really incredible ones in my community too, or like local members of government. But I think like we're talking less about like these different politicians and more about this like our country as a whole and like these big government systems. Like, what are we gonna do? Because we're gonna keep talking about it if not. And like big places like the United Nations too, they have big conversations, but where is this action we're talking about? Where is these solutions and why are they not being implemented? Like what is stopping us? Is it some big level of corruption? I don't know. Is it just like a big level of greed? Maybe, but maybe it's also the fact that like right now people haven't like there's not enough people that have been standing up for what's right. We've been kind of quiet about it. We haven't really known about it because the information hasn't been really shared with us, and our governments haven't been teaching it to us in schools either. So the only reason I really learned about it is because I did the research myself, and I talked to people that really were educated on these subjects and have friends that are climate scientists. And so the thing is though is not every youth would learn that stuff in school, which I think should be another part of it should be a part of our school curriculum to learn about these impacts that are going to be impacting us in the future. And I just want to let everyone know that I have to leave in the next 5 minutes because I have another important call I have to go and prepare for. So if there's any specific questions anyone has for me, I can't see them anymore in the chat because I had to try to reconnect, but yeah, I'll be around for the next 5 minutes. So yeah.
So let's maybe
The question.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say if anyone has any questions for Sierra, let's do that now, and then we'll let her go and continue on addressing them with Ira. Sorry to whoever I interrupted.
People are just saying thanks and thank you. Yeah, no, that was just me, and so thank you, Sierra. Now it's saying my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. But yeah. Thanks for doing this. And there's just a few more questions left in the chat that I can answer. But yeah, no, thank you for joining. That was great. Fun conversation.
We're so appreciative. It was really fantastic to get a national perspective on the challenges that we're facing. So thank you so much from us at MTRI. We've recorded this. I'll send it to you afterwards if you'd like, and we're working on getting them uploaded to our YouTube channel. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been like wonderful to connect with y'all. And yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do to support in the future. Or yeah.
Thanks so much. Is there anyone last questions? Everyone said I hope you can see the chat now, Sierra. Everyone's going fantastic job. So it's but yeah, if anyone has last questions, we'll open the floor just for a minute.
I'd say keep talking. You're not going to accomplish everything you want, but maybe you won't appreciate how much you do accomplish. And how much worse would it be if you didn't engage bureaucrats and politicians? I've had a bit of experience with this stuff. Another thing I'm going to say is that all Canadians are privileged. I spent most of my life working in third world countries. Canada is one hell of a lucky country. And we're not perfect. I agree with you. We can do better, but we also set some good examples. Finally, I would say that world overpopulation is an extremely serious problem, and so is excessive consumption by those of us who are better off. So I think there's two things going on there.
Thanks, John.
It's definitely a big subject.
Definitely.
They're big topics and subjects that do need to be addressed. I definitely do not have all the time to talk about it all today, but
all good. You've done a fantastic job of addressing almost everything. So it's a very broad overview. We'll let you get going then, Sierra. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. See you later. Yeah. Okay, so if we're moving back to I'll let you take over, Ira. Are you back?
I saw. Yeah, no. Yep. Stat that I gave about that we need to reduce to a certain level by 2100. So honestly, I don't know a lot about that stat. It's talking about parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I think that's referring to the very last case worst scenario. And so right now, like Sierra said, we're already facing really direct effects of climate change, but it's not like the tipping point is some ledge that you just suddenly jump off and then suddenly we're completely doomed, thankfully. But so what it is that it's going to keep getting progressively worse and worse. And if you're actively saying no to that, then you're trying to. You're willfully being ignorant to the facts. And so what this means is that we need to take direct action now, and we need to have a better start having a better track record going now, because like we have so much time to accomplish this, but the faster the better. And then like if we get to the year 2100 and we have done it by then, like things are not going to be good. Things are getting worse and worse and worse. And so we want to go as fast as possible, but I do understand that even if we stopped all emissions worldwide right now, this is possible, and do as much as we can. The other question on what the timeline is for the court case, we've been having weekly calls with the lawyers. We're hoping, COVID permitting, we're going to be in courts by the end of September. Court cases are not a quick thing. They're not. It's not something that gets done right away, which I wish it was like, but it's lengthy. It's going to take a while. We're probably going to be in court for a few more years, which is really tough for me because I know we need to move fast. The government needs to start acting now. But this is going to be a long endeavor. I want to keep moving fast. So if COVID is still in full-blown thing, then we're probably going to have our court hearing online, which isn't ideal, but we have to do what we can during these circumstances. But regardless, we are going to be meeting with the judge at the end of September. So I am excited about that. That's like our next big step. Gary, do you have any other follow-up things to those two questions that you had? I'm going to take that as a no.
Well, yeah,
oh.
there is one question. What kind of media coverage are you having with this court case?
Yeah, no. So, when we first started the court case, or like when we had the day where we kind of said we were launching it, like we kind of released it out to Canada, that was crazy. I met everyone from our Children's Trust for the first time. I met all the plaintiffs for the first time, and then within 15 minutes, we were in rooms doing little interviews with each other. And I think kind of that's how we all bonded so quickly, because when you put any group of youth into that high-pressure situation, you kind of group together, especially since everyone is super cool. But no, yeah, within 15 minutes, we were doing a lot of interviews nonstop throughout the next 3 days. And then it sort of started to die down, Halifax places and different reporters and stuff. The legal team and the team that's kind of organizing this, like, they want to have, like, big media kind of takeover kind of things. Like, we want to have lots of stuff going out when big things are happening, like the September court date. Like, when that's coming up closer, we're wanting to, like, really push that out so people aren't forgetting about us. We understand that it's not going to be constant media coverage, even though that would be good to kind of force the federal government into doing something. But I think I'm writing an op-ed next week that's going to go out to different newspapers, and like we're always kind of doing things kind of in a random thing. But when more dates come up that are important, like the court hearing or different rulings, those are when we're hoping you're going to see more stuff in the media.
Yeah, I think it's really
Does that
important
answer?
because probably 75% Canadians have forgotten about this court case.
Yeah. and that's definitely true. No, media is like, they have a media campaign team, and it's definitely super important. And you see, like, the media can lose its interest, like with the different protests that are happening in the US. Like, there was good coverage for about 3 days, and the protests are still continuing. They've been going on for like upwards of 70 days, and the media is not reporting it. They're saying that it's over. And so you see, like, all these different things. They want to keep doing what the public is interested in. And so we realize that the media is definitely super important, and that's why we're going to try to keep it in the spotlight. But at the moment, there isn't that much to report, just because with COVID, things have kind of taken a pause, which no one likes, but hopefully it's going to get back in the spotlight soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ira.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down. Trudeau says he wants to take bold action and lay it out in this speech from throne towards the end of September. Seems like an important time to make a lot of noise in favor of a Green New Deal and just recovery. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think something we can talk about is our recovery path from COVID. Because coronavirus, it has been such a shock to our system, and it proves that we're not ready to deal with something like this. But so as we drag ourselves out of the economic debt and the people that are now jobless and all these other things, as it comes to the end of this, why not recover in a smart way? Because instead of funneling millions of dollar bailouts to fossil fuel industries, why not put the money into rebuilding green technology, a Green New Deal, like making that happen? And that's definitely really important. So if Trudeau wants to do that, I will definitely support him in doing that. Of course, I have my doubts, but hey, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. But as we're recovering from COVID, I think we definitely need to focus on how we recover. We can recover in the right way. So we've seen that the way we have it, our system right now, capitalism, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And so when something like this is a shock to its senses, so whether it's climate change or COVID-19 or anything like this, like, things happen and it destroys the whole thing. So I think we need to have a just recovery. And that means putting the people who have been laid off into new jobs with green technology, green opportunities, like all of these things, so that I think have huge possibilities. Just, they can't be ignored. So our government needs to make sure they pay attention to that when that's happening. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yes, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, that's one reason why I think if the students behind the climate strike do another one this September, the timing would be really good.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe, were you involved in the one last September?
Yeah, the one in Halifax?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was incredible. There were so many people there. That was actually, I think, the first speech I did in front of a lot of people. That was pretty nerve-wracking. There was a lot of people there, but that was definitely a really cool place.
Yeah, I thought that you were, and that's why I thought you might possibly be involved with this one that they're talking about now. But anyway, I think the timing, for the reasons that you were saying, as we're recovering from COVID-19, and there will be lots of money spent, and the question is how it's spent. Is it spent subsidizing fossil fuel to go back into the old ways, or is it spent on a Green New Deal to go in the new direction that you're pushing for and a lot of us are pushing for? And I think that's a huge question. And I think the next 6 weeks and until the next election after that are going to be very important times for determining how that question plays out.
Definitely.
So public demonstrations, I think, do help in this kind of period. But anyway, I certainly understand that you're not involved, and that's fine. I just thought you might be because of your involvement last year. Okay.
No,
thanks.
I definitely agree. And huge mass things are really something good. I think there probably will be something involved in kind of a takeover in Ottawa. There was actually set to be a really big thing there with hunger strikes and everything during everything that was happening with the Wet'suwet'en and the tech mine, but that was, thank God, that was canceled. I had friends that were going to go on hunger strikes, so I was very happy that was not happening. But no, if something big is happening, we will definitely organize something, and
Right.
people will know. So another question I got here is there anything we can do to help out with the court case since the media coverage has slowed down, raising awareness, etc. So that's a really good question. It's sometimes it's difficult, but when we are getting back in the spotlight, when there are news things, like even just like sharing posts and like talking to people you know about it, talking to your government, sending letters, just saying you support this court case. It's all things to kind of wear our government down, to show them we have the public support and the country is on our side. And so all of these things are really helpful. And if you just want to reach out to me, we can definitely arrange something, because it's all these things that we have things that need to be done, and it's just a matter of putting in some time, putting in some effort, and great things are going to happen. And so yeah, it's definitely complicated right now with coronavirus, and I understand that everyone is trying to stay safe and all of that, but even just going to your local, everything related to climate change, any actions you're doing, they help the movement because they show that we have the public support. So going to your local climate march and all of these other things, like everything helps. But yeah, no, you can definitely look up the court case. It's called La Rose versus Her Majesty the Queen, or if you just look up Our Children's Trust, they talk about different ways you can help. I don't see any more questions.
I think that's it in the chat, for sure. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing awareness to that, Rowan, that we can sort of help by sharing information and drawing attention in our own lives and our personal lives to what Ira is doing, and yeah, learning from what they've said to us today. I'm so glad that so many people came. I'm so thankful to you and Sierra for doing a chat for us. I think it's hard work. It's really hard work. But sorry, my roommate just came home. That's so embarrassing. And doing really, really hard work. And we're so thankful for it. Everybody's out here just doing the best. And what you said about community, keeping together, especially in these times of COVID, is so important.
Definitely.
You know, that we unite over these things that we believe to be right. And remember that there's something bigger. There's more years coming. Things of work will be done. So
Definitely.
okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Did you have any last things, Ira, or?
That was great. No, definitely thank you for hosting this. And yeah, like you said, just stay together as a community. Like, community is the way we're going to get through this. Like, relying on each other and showing that our bond is stronger than the government.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but no, definitely thanks for everyone to coming out. And if you have any questions, I'm just going to put my email in the chat if you need to reach out about anything. So
that's great.
And yeah,
Thank you so much.
keep looking at Caledonia Earth Guardians, so we can if there's like we just started, so we're kind of being slow right now, but we're hoping to do more community actions around here. So yeah, if you have any questions or anything like that, just email. So yeah, my email's in the chat.
Thanks so much.
And yeah, great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much for hosting this, Emma. That was really great.
I tried to take a little bit of a back seat and let it play out. So I think it went great. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for coming. As usual, I am archiving these and hoping to upload them to the YouTube site. So keep in touch for those. And tune in next week for Lobke's talk on high aluminum levels in lakes and rivers in Nova Scotia. And why might that be? We're going to find out next week. So, okay. Thank you so much, Ira. I hope everybody has a great Thursday. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Okay. Bye.